All right, this is going to be exercise 12.1 and 12.2. They use the same context. So recent revenue shortfalls in a Midwestern state led to a reduction in the state budget for higher education. To offset the reduction, the largest state university proposed a 25% tuition increase. It was determined that such an increase was needed simply to compensate for the lost support from the state. Separate random samples of 50 freshmen, 50 sophomores, 50 juniors, and 50 seniors from the university were asked whether they were strongly opposed to the increase, given that it was the minimum increase necessary to maintain the university's budget at current levels. Here are the results. All right, so question 12.1. Which null hypothesis would be appropriate for performing a chi-square test? Okay. Choice A. The closer students get to graduation, the less likely they are to be opposed to tuition increases. The mean number of students who are strongly opposed is the same for each of the 4 years. The distribution of student opinion about the proposed tuition increase is the same for each of the 4 years at this university. Year in school and student opinion about the tuition increase are independent in the sample. There is an association between year in school and opinion about the tuition increase at this university. All right, so a lot of good choices to choose from. One thing that I noticed as I was reading the prompt is that it said separate random samples, and it was plural, right? So I know from that that this has to be a test for homogeneity. It's the only chi-square test that relies on data from multiple samples. Okay, so this is a chi-square test for homogeneity. And we know that the language used in the hypotheses for a test for homogeneity, the null hypothesis is that there's no difference in the distributions, and the alternative is that, yes, there is a difference in the distributions. Okay. So as I was reading through the options, I knew B wasn't going to be a good option because it refers to the mean, right, which is a parameter, and chi-square tests don't use parameters. Okay. And then I knew that D and E were not going to be the correct choice because those use the language of independence and association, which is a different chi-square test. So I kind of already narrowed it down to A and C. Now again, we're looking for something that is, along the lines of saying that there's no difference between, the 4 different populations of students, freshmen through seniors. And choice C is the one that basically says that. Okay? The distribution is the same, which is equivalent to saying that there's no difference in the distribution for the 4 different grade levels. All right, let's look at 12.2 since it uses the same prompt. The conditions for carrying out the chi-square test in exercise 12.1 are 1. Independent random samples from the populations of interest. All sample sizes are less than 10% of the populations of interest. All expected counts are at least 5. Okay. Which of the conditions is or are satisfied in this case? All right, so do we have independent random samples? We do, right? The word separate is equivalent to saying independent, right? So that one has been met. Put T for true. All sample sizes are less than 10% of the populations of interest. Okay, so they sampled 50 students from every grade level. It's a university, so there's probably a lot of students there. So I think it's pretty safe to say that 50 is less than 10% of the population of every grade level. Right, I think that's true. All expected counts are at least 5. Okay, so I can tell that all the observed counts are at least 5, but to figure out the expected counts, we'd have to do some calculations. Okay? Now, the quickest way to get the expected counts is to just use our calculator. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and use the matrix here, and then I'm going to make a 2x4 matrix, and then enter in these observed counts: 39, 36, 29, 18, 11, 14, 21, 32. Right, and then I can just run the chi-square test. And now, if I go back and look at matrix B, this is where the calculator will have auto-saved the expected counts. Okay, so looking through these, they're all double digits. Scroll to the right. Yeah, okay, so everything there is greater than 5. All right, so it looks like all 3 of these would have been met, so choice E.